Hi Martin, welcome to episode 86 of Illuminating Rounds. How are we doing? Glasses off?
Yes. You started recording before I was handsome. Yeah, feeling good. I mean, it's the weather's improving, isn't it? It's spring's arriving, and that always cheers me up. How about you? You good?
All good, thank you. Yeah, I was at the West Ham Youth Team Cup final last night. So West Ham's under-18s team beat Arsenal in their own ground 5-1 in the final.
Presumably, Arsenal's under 18s.
It
Not
was,
they
yeah.
didn't just
Although
beat
it could have been
Arsenal.
anyone.
Yeah.
They'd have beaten anyone last night. They were great. It's really good to see. I'm definitely at the age now where I can look forward to like kind of the kids coming through, and the prima donnas of the Premier League. Whatever. You got these young kids that are all a bit feisty. It's always a
Yeah.
bit harsh. I find like when you've got like 40 and 50-year-old guys giving abuse to 17-year-old kids. It was hard. The crowd starts singing things like, he's going to cry in a minute and things like this. It was all,
Yeah.
it's all a bit mean, but it was very good. We had a good time, and it was good to see the West Ham kids doing well. And my football team as well, West Ham, are doing so well in the Premier League and so well in Europe. They're
So unusual, isn't it?
well, I mean, by so well, I mean just off the bottom. I mean they've kind of risen from this kind of
Good for them. Yeah.
yeah. So for the last week, we've won a game 4-0. We won a game 4-1 in Europe, and we've won the Youth FA Cup. It feels like we're like one of these, super rich teams that just don't stop winning. But we'll.
I went to see West Ham once when I was a teenager. I mean, I remember going through the turnstiles, and we were in the stands. They had stands in those days. It was like £2-3 or something to go in. It's a lot more than that to go and watch them now, isn't it?
Well, you won't get.
So,
And there's just flats where that ground was now as well. That's all changed.
yeah.
But
yeah.
yes, yeah, good times.
I remember it looked a bit run down.
Yeah, it's as well. Good memories. But anyway, how about you? What are you up to?
Well, I've started a Twitch channel.
You have.
I have. So if anybody wants to follow me, StratChat2 is the name for the moment. Though we might change that in a couple of months when I'm allowed to, when the cool down period for changing your name.
Is that right? You're not allowed to change it.
You only do it once every 2 months. So yeah, if you look up StratChat2 on Twitch, and if you notice me monetize at some point in the future, and you happen to have an Amazon Prime account and you don't use your free thing, feel free to sub me.
Yeah, absolutely. You're getting all the lingo there now. And yeah, so you're doing Crusader Kings, aren't you, at the moment?
Yeah, I'm playing Crusader Kings 3 only at the moment on my YouTube channel, which I think some of the people listening to this probably already know that I do, and that's called Strat Chat. And that's kind of growing slowly, and people were saying, "No, you should do some live streaming." So I'm going to give it a go and have some fun with it.
Good, excellent. Well done. It's always fun to see you do all that. So I try to support you when I can. So that's good stuff. And yeah, it's all good. We were talking a little bit today about the having a loser bracket for the tournament.
Yeah.
So
100%.
do you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah. So I don't really know why we didn't do this, and a couple of people have asked about it, and I've said, "Oh, yeah, maybe we'll do it next year." But actually, I don't see a reason why we can't do this now. So we've had the first round in the Illuminating Rounds tournament. All the winners are going on, and they are playing shotgun shuffle. So what I'm proposing is I'm going to contact all of the people who lost the first round and are therefore out of the tournament, and say they're not out of the tournament if they don't want to be, and match them up, and they'll shadow the winners as they go forward, play the same scenario against somebody else that lost in the first round, and that way everybody gets 4 games.
2 games.
Not even sure.
2.
No. So this round, yeah. So everybody will get in total in the whole tournament. People get.
Well, you'll get if you get knocked out of this one again, then they'll.
Oh no, because we'll carry. Oh, I see. Yeah, but you can carry it on.
Oh, you're going to keep going for loser. Okay, maybe.
I don't know. So okay, I don't know that. So we'll do it for this round, and then we'll review that. Okay, but anyone listening to this will have already got the email by the time this goes out. But I know that Pete Phillips in the UK in his tournament, he does have a system where everybody carries on playing. Yes. So it ends up being like a kind of a double diamond or something, as you kind of get. But this, yeah. Anyway,
okay.
We'll see.
All right. So basically, in a nutshell, the people who lost the first round are going to be playing in another separate tournament at the moment.
Yeah.
And we'll come up with a prize as well. We'll sort a prize out for that. And they will be playing the same scenario if they choose to. If they don't want to play, they can drop out, and we'll give a bye to the the person that gets through.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, that sounds good. So, and you're going to send an email. That was clear. We've all got that. That's good. Right. Okay. So we're going to talk about Task Force Derby. We played it twice, and so we're going to show both play-ins of that scenario.
I forgot we'd done that.
Yeah, I got a feeling that both of us put one game out of our mind, but not sure which one. So it's a very small scenario from the newest March Madness pack from Encircled Productions, the Kansas City guys. It's available on the archive if you want to buy it. We picked it because it's just a nice small scenario, and it really was like maybe a 2-3 hour scenario. So definitely something you can get done in an afternoon or an evening, and it's a size that is sizable enough that you could literally just spin the counters around and just play it again, and that's basically what we did, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So quite an interesting game, bit of a challenge, and we'll talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about campaign games. We had a question from one of our fellows, Steve.
Hall,
talking about can we talk about campaign games and the preparation behind it, and we'll have a chat, but we'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. We've also got Toby, who's going to chime in about fortified buildings. So always good to do that, because his advice was always to not have fortified buildings, have tunnels. So I'm hoping he's going to go.
He's going to do tunnels next time, I think. So we got tunnels to look forward to.
Good stuff.
Yeah, focusing on the fortified buildings. Yeah.
All right. Well, okay, right. So let's take a look to start with then at Task Force Derby. Okay, Martin. So, do you remember the order of battle and everything on the?
Yes. So, quite a weak force of Germans on board at the beginning. 3 447s or 3.5 447s, 2 light machine guns, and an 8-0 leader. So, quite a weak force. But there are 2 37L anti-aircraft flak guns, which absolutely make mincemeat out of human beings, don't they? So they're very effective against infantry.
And light-skinned vehicles as well.
And light-skinned vehicles, indeed, yeah. As does even the light machine guns potentially. And then the German stragglers, Germans get reinforcements on turn 3. They come along on the
south, which is on the left-hand side, isn't it?
Oh, that's right, on the left-hand side. So they're essentially in pursuit, aren't they?
Yes.
Well, actually, they're not in pursuit, but they're coming along behind the Americans.
Yeah.
The American force has to come on as passengers, and so there's a selection of jeeps. There's 2.5-ton trucks. They do get a tank destroyer, M10 tank destroyer, and the Americans have 6.5 squads, 667s, so reasonable morale and good leadership. 9-1, 8-1. Various bazookas and things like that. No other support weapons.
Okay.
A mortar. There's a 60mm mortar.
So there's 11 victory points to be taken on the runway. There's obviously some victory points to be taken if the Americans manage to kill any of the defenders. Now, the challenge here is that there's a lot of open ground for the Americans to cross.
Yes.
And those infantry guns are pretty dangerous against everything, and it's an easy way for the Germans to rack up a lot of points.
Yeah.
So my approach was I was going to try and swing around the top right-hand side and try and come around the back to try and take on the runway, and then to try and keep you a little bit honest, send a couple of half squads with the jeeps kind of straight down the mouth. Now these are sunken roads, so there really isn't a lot of there's not
much protection there, is there?
That's right. You've got to try and kind of squeeze in. Now, I mean, it's going to be difficult, I think, for the Americans, but let's find out. So we crack on. This is the tank destroyer coming flying round, and I'm quite pleased I managed to get him all the way around, and then. And then the infantry gun,
targets.
with a nice bore-sighted hex. This is my 8-1, 667, and a big truck. You miss. And so it's the anti-aircraft guns, aren't they? These things. And then you have his brother next to him. So this is all pretty grim. So straight away the plan has changed. and I give you a couple of shots here that I probably shouldn't have done.
And of course, it's a chunk of points, isn't it? You already have to get 10 more points than me
Yes.
to win.
Yeah.
And I've just got a chunk of points. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, you spin your guns around. There's a few bits of final fire coming around. And I think this is where I'm stuck. Just like, I just don't know what to do. It's it really is quite a challenge now for the Germans. So, I mean, at this point, you're confident? Are you?
I certainly feel like it's going all right. I mean, I'm worried about the tank destroyer. You know, that's quite a powerful weapon, isn't it? But yeah, I'm wondering how you're going to get the any runway hexes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, you've got your reinforcements are going to come on at some point as well.
Turn 3, yeah. It's not for a while, but yeah.
Yeah. So you do a little bit of repositioning.
I think that's just basic skulking, I think.
Yeah. My tank destroyer is just doing nothing really.
Yeah.
A bit of advancing. But I mean, already I'm feeling like, you know, I've got nothing left.
On the mortar at home, so yeah.
Yeah, you take the mortar out.
And the thing is, sometimes it looks like you've got quite a few counters there, but they're all half squads, most of them, aren't they? It's
yeah, it's all pretty depressing, really. So I have a squad and a half here, a squad at the back, a broken squad. I mean, it's four squads trying to take on like open ground, you know, concealed Germans.
with just jeeps, just soft skin vehicles, really.
Yeah. You know, you're effectively as strong as you were. I think it was just break a leader at the turn. You destroy the jeep, but I decide to push, and I think you get a 3 on the.
Yeah, and I can roll some good dice there as well. Yeah,
and I mean it's game over. It's literally game over. Before your reinforcements have arrived, which are just going to drive straight down the road and off. I mean, that's the other thing you can.
That's it. Yes, you've got nothing to stop them. You've got the tank destroyer to stop them doing that. But I mean, I've got Panzerfausts and things, you know. And, so you know.
So I mean, literally, it couldn't have gone worse. Couldn't have gone worse for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I would love to see. I'd love to see some play into this, just to show what can be done differently.
That'd be fantastic. Yeah.
We had a chat and we said, okay, well, look, clearly that approach didn't work. So should we swap sides and try again? And that's what we did. So let's close this one up, and I'll open up the new one. So you had a different approach. So let's talk about your strategy. So this time, you are the Americans.
Yes.
So I set up the Germans very similar to you. Just swapped the anti-aircraft guns a little bit over, just to get a little bit, and brought one of the squads up into the airfield as well with the light machine gun, just to be able to get them back a little bit.
Yeah.
So what's your tactics, Martin? It's completely different on this one.
So yes, I'm going to try and set up for an ambush because your reinforcements have to come on the same edge as me. So instead of trying to assault the runway, I'm going to try and ambush your reinforcements and get lots of points. That's the plan.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can kill.
And you've got a very similar setup to me, haven't you? You've set up the Germans almost identically, yeah.
Very similar. Just with a squad back at the runway and the guns slightly differently. All right. So this is a very strange one because basically you're coming on and you're just going to sit on the ball edge.
Trying to move my vehicles where they're safe.
Yeah.
I need to get caught out a couple of times, I think, with shots. In fact.
Yeah, that one doesn't. But but yeah, it's not far away. But to be fair, it's already a better attack than mine, and you're not even setting up to attack.
At least I haven't lost everything. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you haven't. So okay, the mortar's getting set up here. Jeeps making themselves safe.
Yeah.
And basically,
a really short turn 2 or something like
That's
that.
exactly
Or
right. Yeah, so literally nothing happened on turn
3, I
2.
think that literally didn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly that. So we're literally on turn 3 with you not
Yeah.
doing anything, and you are now in position, just
Yeah.
waiting for these reinforcements to come on. So
Mm.
my approach is I've got to make sure that nothing gets killed, because if anything gets killed,
Yeah.
it's an easy way for you to get some points.
Mm.
And I kind of identify. I mean, and it's not that straightforward. I mean, there's not a lot of spaces I can jump on where subsequent turns I'll be safe. I figure that the kind of the top of the board is a little bit safer than the
Yeah.
bottom of the board. And the plan is to bump you to lose your concealment and then try and jump into close combat.
Yeah.
But then I've still got to survive. There's some big stacks around here,
Mm.
and I've got to survive the open ground and the attacks there. So I start pushing the guns into position
Yeah.
at the bottom here. And it's worth pointing out that the Germans don't have to enter as riders.
That's right.
So yeah, you luckily you cower here, which is quite nice. I advance on board here.
Yeah.
For my quickest turn 3, pretty much. Yeah, you ambush me,
Yeah.
but don't. Yeah, so I get an 11 on the close combat. We have no.
So why didn't I withdraw?
Well, that's a good question. I think. Yeah, I mean, you definitely could have done.
I think that would have been game over, wouldn't it?
Oh, maybe you didn't ambush me because I was concealed. So
Yeah,
I don't think
yeah,
you did.
probably.
I had the -1 leader, so no.
Because 12 up 1 would have been a good prep
Yeah.
fire shot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you start firing into the melee,
Mm.
and I'm actually thinking, I'm going to lose this. I'm going to. This
Yeah.
is really quite bad, isn't it? Yeah. On comes the tank, and this is perhaps the right answer for the Americans is just not to worry about the. Because now, I mean, basically, the Americans are swarming this pocket of Germans that have come on.
Who haven't really had time to sort of get themselves into decent positions.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly. So you're firing into the melee. You don't really care, which is absolutely the right thing to do.
Some low rolls there. Yeah. I think both of us are rolling quite low there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got a few breaks. The thing is, you got nowhere to route to. If anything, if it goes wrong, it's disastrous, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah. And there's a big set of guys here that are in trouble. But we are able to prep. I mean, it's prep firing on the edge of the board, like you say. But the thing is, I am able to route above. Go, I can go. You haven't got something around the top
at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I decided to pull the Germans off board. So this is because obviously it's going to give me 2 more points. So it means you need to get 13 points. Of stuff.
Yeah.
We're fighting on the edge. There's a close combat here with the jeep and the squad, which is. I think these guys had like anti-magnetic mines and they had all sorts of.
There was no way I was going to win that. No.
Yeah, because we were talking about whether the anti-tank magnetic mine would work, and you were like telling me if we put it on a car, it'd be pretty good.
I think we thought it was a bit daring with me with the jeeps. I was too daring, but I guess I was hoping to break you in the advancing fire and stuff. But in retrospect, it was a bit daring, a bit too risky.
But you are doing a lot of damage. The casualty bins at the moment. So you've got 6 points of casualties, and I've got 2 points against you. So you've got a net of 4 points up. So you need another 7. So it's not looking great for me.
No.
There's a bit of routing. So for example, if you was to take the armored car and destroy that, there's a bunch of points there for you. So and now you're up to 10 points. So you have eight more. So
you're running trucks off now.
I'm running the trucks off for I think it's an extra point or so, 2 points. I don't know.
I can't remember how it ends.
Are you looking forward to see the ending?
Yeah.
So yeah, so
I've
still
got my
10.
tank recalled, haven't I? And then it's destroyed.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so your tank
Yeah,
gets recalled,
yeah,
and with a double stun, and then I have to shoot it on the way out to make sure that we get the
yeah.
points for it.
Yeah. Otherwise, you wouldn't have got the points. Yes,
That's
and of
right.
course, you pants of house stuff like crazy, aren't you? You've got,
That's right.
or
Yeah,
it's 45. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And at this
struggling with
point, yeah, at this point we call it because the the destroyed tank is going to give me
a lot
a
of points.
whole
Yeah.
bunch extra, and you can't stop.
So why didn't you send all of the airport force off, including the crews?
Because I thought you would send a vehicle round to capture the runway, and that'll give you the 11
Yeah,
points
yeah,
if you gather that.
fair
So
enough.
yeah, so the Germans win again, but it was a good attempt by the Americans to win in a very unusual way.
Yeah.
So
I'd be really interested. I mean, if somebody has played it and can send a log file, that'd be fantastic. But
yep,
I would even be interested if people just had thoughts about how they would win it as the Americans,
yep,
because we both failed, and in the end, both failed quite convincingly
yeah, yeah,
to win it. What is the strategy that
right.
would win this for the Americans?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think I've tried this a few times, and I know we've tried things like Scenario of the Month and stuff. But
Mm.
this goes for, and what we'll do is if we announce the games that we're playing, and we can't announce the game that we're going to play next time for reasons you will know on the next episode.
Mm.
But in future, what we'll do is we'll announce what game we're playing, and if you people want a chance to play the scenario that we're going to play, we'll feature it alongside the one that we're doing as well to give people like a double dose, if you like, of the scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one, Task Force Derby. If you've got any American wins or thoughts on, thoughts on how the American win, please do give us a shout on that.
Mm.
I don't mind. I don't mind it being an unbalanced scenario. It was fine, and I don't doubt that we're struggling. I did speak to Dave around the design of the scenario, and they said that they'd won and lost as the
Yeah.
Germans and the Americans, so they were, they felt it was reasonable, but that the like kind of a full-on attack on the runway doesn't work very well, and I think we can attest to that. But your
It's
approach
kind
may
of
be
instinctively the obvious ASL thing to do, isn't it? Is to
that's
do
right.
the full attack on the wrong way. Yeah.
That's right. We've been playtesting this week as well, so we can't really talk too much about that. But it was quite an interesting scenario that we playtested with an interesting kind of setup and another challenging scenario. But that's the challenge with us when we playtest. We can't really highlight the games, and it does take away some of the playing time that we've got to play. And it was a reasonable size scenario that we playtested, wasn't it? So we can't do that.
So
Next,
what can we tell them about the game we're going to play next time?
right. So the thing that we're going to play next time, we're going to say we are going to do something that no other, I believe, no other ASL players have ever done before. We are
Wow.
genuinely, we are not only trying.
Pioneers.
Sorry.
Pioneers.
Pioneers indeed. We are ASL pioneers, and I don't think it's a trend that's going to take off, but it's unique.
It'll be interesting.
It will be interesting. It will be interesting, and it also gives a chance to talk about some other stuff that I'd like to talk about this time, but we're going to talk about next time in terms of what where everything's going and bits and pieces. So unique. What's going on? Feel free to have a guess at what we're going to do if you want to in the comments. That's the challenge, is trying to figure out what we're going to be doing. And it's the other thing I thought about that we just talked about just before we started recording was whether there are any co-op scenarios, but not against another player. So two players taking on something. So that where, for example, two players can win or lose as a side against a kind of scenario. So some kind of system where, a bit like a solitaire ASL, but two sides, so two distinct teams, if you like, trying to beat a system in a cooperative scenario. So, I mean, are there cups? I know that there are scenarios that you can play as two players against two other players and things like that, but more of a kind of a co-op experience of an ASL, because I think that's one of the things that is sometimes quite nice, is that if you can play a scenario together rather than against each other. Like, imagine, and one of them, for example, could be, like Blood Reef Tarot. We've talked about, you almost could have a setup for the Japanese where they just fire everything almost as a like in a solo ASL kind of approach.
I think you could very, very easily modify the Sassel rules to
yeah
do the Japanese defence in
yeah
Blood Reach.
yeah, and then just play the landings out.
One of the things is that one of the things about landings is it's quite dice heavy. It can feel a little bit like work. But so can Sassel systems, so you kind of combine those, but you could definitely do it, and it would certainly be interesting.
Yeah. Because that's the only downside I think to ASL sometimes is that like we don't ever both walk away winners. I think sometimes we'll say that we both feel like we lost that scenario.
So how can we make? So it's basically saying is there a way that we can make ASL a co-op game?
Yeah.
Sometimes, obviously not necessarily all the time, but it's interesting. Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be nice, wouldn't it? It would be nice.
I
All right.
co-op.
Okay.
You know what? This you do sometimes. This is kind of different, but did you ever see when they somewhere in on the south coast of England they set out that huge Gold Beach landing scenario, which is like 50 boards.
Yes.
And they got somebody to play the Germans and somebody the British on for each of them. They sat next to each other.
Right.
Sequence. It's not quite co-op because I think they were each sort of just playing really one scenario, but they were directly connected to the people that were sat next to them. Yeah. It's interesting.
And you can definitely play things like I think Festung Budapest, where you've got the two different. Is it the Hungarians or Romanians? I think. You can kind of play those as a kind of three or four player scenario.
I think there's lots of scenarios which would handily turn into sort of 4 players, like sort of pairs, essentially, like 2 pairs playing each other. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So, okay, talking about campaign games, and the question came up about how do people prepare and what's going on with a campaign game. We haven't played a lot of them, have we? We tend to fall into the category of we love the idea of them, and then we play it and we don't quite burn out on it, but we kind of yearn. I think, well, certainly me, I yearn for the simplicity or the greenness of another scenario in terms of if you're especially playing a lot of Red Barricades, suddenly you yearn for forests and brush and you're looking at a lot of brown all the time.
I'm sure it was like that for the people who were fighting in Star Trek.
Absolutely. So we did a bit of Danont, didn't we? And I think again, I don't know if you saw the thread of the Danont photos. It's given me a hankering to get Danont back out again. I know that we're midway through it and we're suffering from a bit of burnout of the sides of that campaign in terms of the counter density and everything. But so the first thing is if you haven't seen the photos that someone I forget who it was, they went to Danont and took all the photos and almost overlaid it with the maps. It's spectacular, absolutely spectacular. And it shows what a great job the map designers have done of portraying what Danont actually. It's amazing. We'll look at it afterwards together.
And of course we interviewed the map designer, didn't we, way back?
Yeah, it's Dan and and there's Carl as well that's involved. And it's Nadir. Is it Nadir? I think may have done the map as well. I think there's a few guys that were involved in it. But anyway, there's the kind of when we get into the campaign, it's actually a lot more fun than everything else. What's your views in terms of preparation for campaign games, and how complicated are they for an average ASL player?
Yeah, so if somebody's never played them before, I think one of the big challenge is the rules in between. What do you call it? The refit phase.
The refit stage.
Yeah, the refit phase. And I remember trying to sort of read those and digest it and understand it. It's quite lengthy. And when I was playing Martin Mayers, he said, "Don't even try to do that. Okay, what you do, you play the scenario when you're new to campaign games. Play the scenario, the first one, gets the refit phase, and literally you just follow it through. It's a sequence. You're supposed to do it in order. It literally says, like, this is the point where you take all the DM counters off, and then you take these counters off, and then these guys come back, and these guys. You just literally go through it. So learn it doing it is the easiest way. But that's you as somebody who's new to campaign games. Obviously, if you've played a few, you do internalize that sequence, and then you can start to incorporate that into your tactics and your strategy. Like, because I think when we played Din on, I ended up with somebody, halfway up a cliff. Turned out that wasn't a good place to finish the whatever. And of course, you never know exactly when the scenario is going to end, do you? Because of the randomness of that. So I think that was really good advice. After that, I've never been scared of campaign games. I just go through it one step at a time. And this is something that I don't know that I do, but I've been told I should do. And that is, if you're going to play a campaign game, which is a huge investment of time, is get you and your opponent together, having read through the special rules, and just play the first date through in an afternoon quickly, without worrying about getting the tactics right, without worrying about anything. Just play it through quickly, and then at the end, there's no winner or loser. You just simply, it's a part of the preparation. Play it properly, because the thing is, they are complex and they are large, and you can completely screw it up, and then you're not going to have a very good campaign game. Whereas if you play it through quickly, you've got a sense of what the issues are, where you need to be, what you need to be defending, etc., and you get the game. Sorry, Dave.
No, I was agreeing with completely. And I think I was remembering back to when we did that with Danon, and at the start, I remember setting up all my guys, and then the first thing I noticed was, you get this massive rocket bombardment. Wait a minute. I didn't realise that. And then, like, half my defence just and then you learn so much on the first turn. No, you're absolutely right. The other thing I think is, it wouldn't be a bad idea, if you can, is to read an AAR of what goes on in a scenario or in a campaign, to get the feel for the flow of it. And I think that's more important in things like Pegasus Bridge, where there's quite a lot of different swings, isn't there? It's almost like it's like a pendulum of one side is on top now, the other side's on top, and you get a feel for that. Whereas things like Red Barricades and to some extent the other kind of the Stalingrad ones, where you're just putting more and more infantry into this meat grinder, aren't you? And you're knowing that there's not so much of a pendulum swing in that. I mean, there definitely is, but it's not as pronounced as a smaller campaign game like Pegasus Bridge. In terms of the first campaign games to try, I mean, I think Pegasus Bridge is the classic one, but I think these days Hatton in Flames is probably a great choice if you've got it. I think Hatton in Flames is possibly the perfect one to start with, because it's a little bit more straightforward in terms. I don't think there's any night scenarios in there, and I think that's the other challenge in campaign games, isn't it? That there's usually one night scenario snuck in there that kind of puts people off. And I think we say this every time. Like, night rules are a pain. You use the amazing Bring on the Night article, JR Van Munchen. Butchered his name, apologies, but it's an amazing article about how to play the night rules. And then you'll think, night rules aren't a problem, we should play them more often. And then you never play another night scenario for 2 years. And you're back to square one.
It really changes the game, doesn't it? And it's quite interesting. And actually, do you know what? I played a guy that lived near me, Polish guy, for a little while, and he loved the night rules. So we used to play night quite frequently.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. That it's unusual to play a night scenario, isn't it? It's funny.
Yeah. So it is.
The other one, the one that I really enjoyed playing, again, relatively early on in my career as a campaign game player, is Purple Heart Draw, which I think is, I'd have to look it up actually. Is it Bounding Fire?
Yeah, we can look it up.
Look it up. The Purple Heart Draw is a good introduction. It's not too big. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on, but lots of things make campaign games difficult. But one of the things is understanding what's going to be important on the second date and the third date, because very often you'll do like you do your best defense of the bridge or whatever, and you lose the bridge. And it's only after that you realise that you were always going to lose the bridge. You needed to protect the entry hexes for your reinforcements and stuff like that. So you do need to kind of look ahead a little bit and think about the second date.
Right. Lone Canuck is the.
Yes, that makes sense. Lone Canuck, and that's a good one.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, and that's highly recommended. Obviously, we've got some Mary Glees coming in soon. I think we're about to get a copy of that when Indy arrives.
Yeah,
So
and
working.
indeed, you know what, the starter kit campaign game might not be a bad place to start. Um, Elst,
Oh, Decision Elst. Yes,
isn't it
yes.
Elst? I mean, that's a full campaign game, relatively, perhaps a little bit pared back, but not very much pared back. And you could even play it with the full ASL rules. In fact, I think somebody has
I did.
created.
Yeah, I literally have played the first bit
Yeah,
without. Basically, we just said bypass was fine, and we'll
yeah,
use concealment, and
mm,
it's absolutely fine. I mean, I don't doubt it's gonna swing the balance in someone's
yeah,
favour. But you're
yeah,
absolutely right. It's definitely playable. It gives you the feel for what a campaign game feels like,
yeah,
and I think that's the thing is that you will feel like okay, it's a long scenario, and you've got 3 or 4 more to go in the same kind of ilk, but it does give you a feel for conserving forces and taking ground and looking forward to the fact that the battle might end and you can
yeah.
solidify the
Sure.
gains.
The sort of smaller ones that we've kind of mentioned. I mean, you can play in an afternoon or a day. If you've kind of prepared for it, you've read the rules up and you're coming along with an idea of how you're going to set up. You can play it through in a day or so.
You think what the whole campaign or one scenario?
No, let's say like one scenario.
Right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons that actually Vassal goes well with campaign games, isn't it? I
Yeah.
think unless you've got lots of dedicated playing space.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
There's nothing.
but the really big ones they're much more difficult to play. I mean, you struggle to play a turn of the big Stalingrad ones
Right.
in a day.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing quite like the view you get from seeing a campaign game laid out, on the full maps, in a nice environment. And often there's a tournament. If you go to tournaments, you'll see someone attempting to play a whole campaign game, or someone always set up in a corner somewhere. And it's something
turn
to.
two, don't they? Yeah,
Yes, it's something to, yeah, exactly. But it is something that's worth seeing and experiencing. Definitely, if you haven't played campaign games, it's worth it. And they're not terrible. And I think if you just go into expectation of just going to explore it together and see what
yeah,
happens,
yeah,
I think the danger of it is that there's a lot of time that goes in, and it can feel like you can not waste the time, but if you make the wrong decisions either at the start or you buy the wrong reinforcement groups or whatever, that you've wasted your ASL time if it wasn't competitive, and that can be a challenge. And it is hard to keep people's personal morale going all the way through. Invariably, someone will be winning a campaign. It's unlikely because there is a little bit of a steamroller effect, isn't there, where you feel like you're struggling, and maybe at the start of the game you've had a big amount of losses, and then there's not very many equalizing mechanisms in campaign games where so in a scenario you play to a conclusion and you're done. With a campaign game, it's like a sliding scale, but the trouble is that the attacking side or the defending side, if they're on top, have like a false multiplier that just gets worse and worse, in terms of for your opponent as the scenario goes on, because they have more things to attack and they have less things to worry about coming on, and so you kind of get into this point where it feels like it's snowballed into an obvious result. And I think that's the only downside with campaigns, to try and keep that
yeah.
going. But I think Decision Else.
Yeah, sorry, Karen.
No, I just going to say I think Decision Else and Hackney Flames are small enough that they are manageable and they are competitive through towards the end of those scenarios.
Yeah, yeah. I think some of the more complex, bigger ones can be deceptive in terms of who's winning. I mean, we were playing Dinant, weren't we? And you were like sort of miserable about your chances of winning all the way through, until we realised that you were definitely winning, and it was
that's because of the victory conditions being like you need 100 points off this thing. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah,
the French are destroyed at the beginning, and it's a great sense as the Germans in Dinant of like building the bridges over, and you're going to get your traffic flowing shortly and stuff like that. But every turn that it takes to destroy those French units is a victory for the French.
Right,
so it can be very deceptive, and Pegasus Bridge is like that. Pegasus Bridge, the Germans have an awful time, I think, in the second 8.
So the commandos coming across and everything.
Yeah, that's right. But they come back, so it's easy to kind of throw the towel in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot with ASL, it's a lot about reading the story of not reading the story of the battle, but the story of the campaign that you're playing. And it's more that than it is trying to win or lose. I think most people in a campaign game, it's not about the competitive spirit of it, that it might be like a, like a knife fight style scenario where it's like, all down to, the final turn or whatever. In a campaign game, it's more like, let's tell the story of our, reimagining of this battle. And there will be great stories that come out. I think this is the beauty of something like a campaign game, which is it happens more often where you get the stories. Oh, there was this building here and we just couldn't take it, and there was it's a tank that was destroyed in the street, and then the guys with the flamethrowers came. And these little things happen in campaign games that you see the scope of the system so much more than just a scenario. So playing those things, you will experience that, and it will stick with you. I think, if people haven't played campaign games, they should do one. I think every ASL player should strive for one campaign game a year. I think that would be that should be the challenge. But
per year, I thought you were going to say in a lifetime. Per year, yeah, absolutely. Yes, this is sort of the mecca of ASL playing. Yeah. Well, actually, no, that's the tournament, isn't it? In everybody should go once in their life to Aslock. Yeah. Everyone should.
I will take you there one day. We'll go together.
I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, no, definitely. We'll go. There is one problem with campaign games, I think, especially the big Stalingrad ones, is that there's a very, very high casualty rate and nothing happens to the support weapons. So you end up with a force where every squad's got a medium or a heavy machine gun, and I think that's something. Yeah, I remember when we played it, we ended up with loads. The place was littered. Couldn't be bothered to pick them up.
Right. Yeah. And it's quite stretching for your counter supply as well. You've got to, if you've just got, I don't know, one copy of everything, sometimes you might struggle for counter mixes, but that's great in a way.
I mean, how many have they got on Vassal?
It depends how many people are playing at the same time, I suppose. But yeah, you're right. Vassal's the answer. There we go. But anyway, so listen, I'd like to hear people's favourite campaign games in terms of I know we've done like kind of best of the best and all that kind of stuff, but personal experiences of the funnest campaign games you played, tips for unloved, unspoken about campaign games these days. Are we going to try some Mary Glees? Are we going to try one of the campaign games there?
Well, I think probably. I mean, let's get it and have a look at the maps and things. But it would be a shame not to, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I think,
reinforcement of cows and things like that. I think I've heard the cows counters and stuff. We'll have a look. All right, okay. Let's listen to Toby, and he's talking about the fortified buildings.
Okay, so today I'm going to look at fortified buildings, and I suppose the most basic level, of course, they provide extra cover and make it so that enemy infantry units can't advance into your location if there is an unpinned squad in that location. And I suppose that's pretty basic. I mean, one of the little things about the cover is that what that can do is an extra +1, especially in the stone building, can sometimes make you invulnerable to being DM'd, and that's always worth thinking about. Just that alone. So you just can't dink a 50mm mortar on your head and go, oh yeah, I managed to hit. That's DM status. Think about that as a little tip. I'd also say that, as usual, these little surprises, fortified buildings have more impact if they come as surprises, and surprises have more impact the later they occur in a game. So a little thing that I often do is put hip squads into fortified buildings, and then what you can do is, if that factory building at the back of the board that he's trying to take, and he's got all his units, and he's following his timetable, and then he he advances in, and you suddenly reveal that unit and say, oh no, so you can't advance in, and he bounces back out. And such ploys as that can completely interrupt your opponent's attacking schedule. So, because once it's known, once you claim that extra +1, he knows where it is, doesn't he? He knows where it is, and thinks, oh, okay, I've got to pin that guy to be able to get in or break him or whatever, or we'll then charge the tanking. So the more you can keep it unknown, the more you can avoid putting that counter on, saying yes, this is fortified. The more chance the fortified building has of having a big impact. And the last thing about fortified buildings is don't forget that you can put guns in the upper levels of buildings if you fortified them, from the bottom up, and that is often extremely useful. And if you have multiple fortified building locations to use, that's often a tactic that I'll use, is get that 75L anti-tank gun higher up so it can see over things. That's my thoughts on fortified buildings. It's not a colossal amount to say. The real thing about fortified building locations is the main thing one does with them is usually swap them for tunnels. And at some point, I'll move on to tunnels next.
Yeah, got it.
So obviously we knew that Toby was going to talk about tunnels at the end there. He couldn't help himself.
It's typically not doing the advice on tunnels, and I'm playing Dave Moresque with tunnels before Toby sends us the advice.
Right, yeah.
Brilliant.
Putting hipped units inside fortified locations seems particularly devious, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I love it. I like it because in a good scenario, at the end, you're clutching for victory, aren't you? You're just getting over the line. You think, I just get that guy in that victory condition building. No, you can't get in there or whatever. That's it, isn't it? You've lost the game. So he's absolutely right.
Yeah, exactly that.
What about guns upstairs? You can't get any gun upstairs, can you?
The usual ones that can go inside buildings.
Yeah,
if they're fortified.
You can see over the wheat, can't you? That way you can see over the walls and the hedges. Yeah.
Right, exactly that. Yeah. I'm hankering for a face-to-face game, Martin. I think we're due one with each other.
We're overdue one, aren't we?
We are. Yeah. So I want to see the face when you, because that's the thing about vassals. You don't necessarily see their face when you reveal your hip unit, and then you reveal it's inside a fortified location as well. I just hear the silence on vassal more so.
Yeah. If you don't even think to look up, but your opponent's like this.
Yeah. Exactly. Right, you're playing your second round. I'm about to start my second round of the tournament. You came across the problem, so well done for fixing the problem on the board M.
Board M. That's good. I think it was. To be fair, it was Dave Moresque that spotted it.
You couldn't have done it without your help. I don't doubt. You enabled the brilliance. That was the.
And Tom
fixed it.
Doug Rimmer. Yeah, they all did their bit.
We have to shout out, really. We have an amazing community. We genuinely do have an amazing community. If you have been on the Discord sections, if you listen to the 2 half squads, if you listen to any of the ASL kind of podcasts or video shows, Stu's replays, everybody is so prepared and willing to help people. It's a very wholesome, and I know that ASL guys have had their kind of spats in the past, but I think those are largely in the past these days. There's generally, I've talked before about, at tournaments, I find that tournaments are much more, they were never tense affairs, but they are much more relaxed now than they have ever been in terms of, people just enjoying the weekend away and in good company and everything. So I have to have a shout out to everybody that jumps in to help, for example, you guys with the boards and the emails that we get as well, bits and pieces. It's very good.
It occurs to me, so I think most people probably know who Tom Repetti is, or have heard of Tom Repetti perhaps, and grateful for how he helps the hobby. But I've heard the name Doug Rimmer, but I didn't know that Doug Rimmer looked after the Vassal boards and stuff like that.
And maintains Vassal, yeah.
And who does and maintains vessels? I mean, I'm sure there are people that do.
Yeah, big shout out to them. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think one thing there we can do is just always, I think if you do nothing else in the hobby other than provide feedback, which everybody is able to do, to people like Doug or to Tom or to any of the publishers that you enjoy playing scenarios for, it's the least that people can do, and it does mean a lot to people. I think as we know, nobody is retiring off the money that they make maintaining Vassal or updating Vassal balls for, it's bonkers, and people just give their free time up to do this kind of stuff, and so we have to give a big shout out to a lot of those people. So if people want to give us an idea for people to give some shout outs to, it's the least we can do to highlight their input and bits and pieces. So good job for those guys. If you are interested, if you are a campaign veteran and you'd like to talk about campaign games, we would love to have a quick 10-minute interview with you guys. Feel free to get in touch and we'll arrange a chat. We just want to hear about your experience of playing campaign games. What do you think the right thing to do is? How do you prepare for a game of Red Barricades or Festa and Budapest if you've never played it before, or if you've played it 5 times? If you are a real grizzled veteran, get in touch and we'll see if we can get you on the show
that'd be great,
and have a chat. So by all means, let us know about that. Anything else, Martin?
Nah.
Before we venture into the unknown of ASL novelty and history,
I think people will not guess what we are going to do for the next episode.
Well, okay then, let's leave it on that cliffhanger.
Yeah,
and I'll see.
Put some comments in the bottom if you think you do know.
Absolutely, yeah, because it will give some ideas for the next one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Excellent.
All right.
All the best. Take care.
Cheerio, everyone. Bye bye.